What is architecture founded upon? Is it the setting, or the place, or even the human? Rather, architecture has always been influenced by the teachings of the Vitruvian Man throughout history. The concept of the Vitruvian Man was first birthed into conception in 1490 by Leonardo da Vinci, having the attribute of perfect natural proportions. Thus, the analogical relationship between architecture and the human body appears to ensure that the natural laws of beauty and nature are transferred into architecture. The Vitruvian Man has served as a model for architecture since the Renaissance period, yet over time began to be a controversial precedent. As Diana Agras puts in her article, Architecture from Without, Body, Logic, and Sex, architecture has made the model of the European Caucasian male to be overtly significant, taking on both the female and male role of birthing a city. But as the field has become more and more globalized, now the model overshadows minority groups of color and gender and ultimately obscures their work in favor of the Vitruvian Man. The impact of the Vitruvian Man, at first inspirational, now serves problematic in the schema of becoming an inclusive field. Fortunately, as time passes by, the field of architecture has become more and more inclusive to people of different races and genders, and started to combat the stereotypical white male figure that has been the forefront of the industry. However, the industry has not yet fully encompassed the progression of gender and racial equality, and must continue in their efforts to do so or risk not excelling and expanding to its full potential as a field. As efforts to provide new perspectives into architecture endeavors, it is important to observe the reaction to minority peoples in context of periods of time where they were prospering. In her essay titled Black Bodies, White Cities, Le Corbusier in Harlem, Mabel Wilson, a current professor of Columbia University's Graduate School of Architecture, Art, and Planning, analyzes Le Corbusier's planning of the Radiant City, as it was not merely utilizing a certain area as a blank slate with visions of modernism, but one that predicated upon topographical boundaries underwritten by racial difference. Describing Le Corbusier's visit to Harlem, New York in 1913, Wilson notes that Corbusier thought of the spirit of death cloaks the skyscrapers, and that blackness or darkness was taking over Harlem. This visit was during the height of the Harlem Renaissance, the most notable exploration and collaboration of African American culture, identity, art, and music, serving as a rebirth of African American arts during the 1910s and 1920s. Le Corbusier, however, did not see the celebration as a positive influence and believed that he could fix Harlem if the people went along with his plans of creating a radiant metropolis, filled with white cathedrals of glass and steel, with black signifying a bruised spirit while white stood for triumph. According to Wilson, the Radiant City is the pyramid of natural hierarchies. This pyramid is a sociopathic order structured according to a resident's occupation. Political order fits neatly into the schema of racial patriarchy. If you go back to the beginning of the article, Wilson mentions how these jazz clubs were run by white owners with black jazz players who often forced non-compliant workers to work. This therefore would be a sort of proof for the argument that social hierarchy would therefore equal a racial hierarchy. Wilson notes this idea as a dangerous and racist endeavor, one that would have ultimately alienated the African American community from certain areas of study, like architecture. Le Corbusier's plan for a great city was marvelous, yet the intentions of racial hierarchy proved faulty, and such divisions and segregations of race would have torn the hypothetical city apart. However, there are opportunities and decisions made to pave the way for minorities through the modern lens. In an interview done with Mabel Wilson for the Architect's newspaper to discuss her new book, Beginning with the Past, she recalls the hard-fought process of designing and creating the National Museum of African American History and Culture. The newest addition to the Smithsonian Institution opened in September 2016. Wilson was a participant in the competition for the museum in collaboration with DS+R and Hood Design Studio. And she explains how the Smithsonian sought African American-led firms and experts to participate in the competition process, helping bring to light the imbalance of minority-owned and operating firms and architects in architectural competitions to date. This helped the project end up using a diverse range of people such as lead designer David Ajayi and lead architect Philip Freelon, and the Bond Smith Group, who won the international competition in April 2009 to design the museum. Synthesizing Freelon's knowledge as a designer for African American museums and the late J. Mack Bond Jr.'s designs for African American historic sites into this new museum. In the same vein, activism towards more gender equality within architecture in the modern era have started emerging. In 1881, Louise Bethune, stationed in Buffalo, New York, became the first female to open her own architectural firm in the U.S. Bethune also continued to pave the way for women by becoming the first female elected to the AIA in 1889. In 1873, Mary L. Page became the first woman to earn a degree in architecture in the United States by graduating from the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign. Julia Morgan became the first woman accepted into École des Beaux-Arts in Paris in 1898. She was not recognized for her accomplishments, however, until 60 years after her death in 2014, when she was awarded the AIA Gold Medal, the AIA's highest prize that has been awarded since 1907. In 1948, architect Eleanor Raymond constructed her first solar-heated home in the United States, the Dover Sun House in Dover, Massachusetts. In 1900s, the only 39 women graduated from formal architecture programs in the US. However, by 1999, the number of licensed female architects rose to about 30,000, women comprising about 15.5% of licensed architects in the United States. Zaha Hadid was acknowledged for her success in the industry in 2004 when she became the first woman to win the Pritzker Architecture Prize after 25 years of only male winners. However, she still stated that for a woman to go out alone into architecture is still very, very hard. It's still a man's world. Although she may not have wanted to, Ms. Hadid has become a symbol and role model for women in architecture today. After her death on March 31st at age 65, the New York Times asked its female architect readers to talk candidly about their experiences in the field. There were a wide range of responses, such as Flavia Quintanilla, Brazil, who commented that I did what most successful female architects did before Zaha. I partnered with my husband. There were many good comments about the industry, but there were also other comments, such as from Yin Ha in New York, who wrote, "Every job site means a new contractor who will assume I am the assistant, decorator, or intern." The architectural industry has become more and more inclusive over time and have found many role models in people such as Zaha Hadid, but there always remains room for progress. Today, African American women make up less than 0.3% of the architecture industry, with only about 300 licensed African American women architects in all of the United States. Minorities reported that their barriers to entering the profession included fewer education financing opportunities, a perceived low return on the expense of schooling, a lack of role models, and low awareness of the career path, as well as the lack of role models and lack of knowledge about the field. A fact present in a number of sources was that although women account for about half of all students enrolled in American architecture programs, only about 20% of licensed architects are women. In 2017, the AIA released their Equity in Architecture Commission report, whose purpose is best summarized by Rosa Sheng, author of the 2015 AIA Resolution 15-1, that in order to achieve equity in the built environment, the architecture workforce needs to reflect the rapidly changing demographics of those peoples who are charged to serve. Comprising of a panel of 20 architects, educators, and diverse experts, the Commission came up with a list of 11 recommendations to help with these problems of diversity and inclusion in the profession. Although the numbers found in the study showed improvement in diversity and inclusion in some ways, other parts of the AIA study showed that there is still more that can be done to improve these important factors. The report shows obstacles for women in architecture, such as work-life balance, that results in many women to resort to waiting to have a family until later in life or leaving the industry altogether. This is especially because it is found that once women take maternity leave, they are often not trusted with the same amount of responsibility on their return, the 6th annual Women in Architecture Survey in 2017 revealed. This study was posted by Architecture Journal and became a widely talked about study on sites such as ArchDaily. Although this study showed a greater acceptance of the authority of women architects by the building industry than in years prior, it still shows there is room for improvement. More than half of the women surveyed say that they have experienced discrimination, including sexism, bullying, and/or sexual harassment within the last year in their practice and at the office. Almost 1/3 of women also describe being sexually discriminated by their clients by being ignored or refusing to work with primary female architects. Within the scope of architecture, William Sloane Coffin says, "Diversity may be both the hardest thing to live with and the most dangerous thing to be without." Without diversity, architecture will not be able to advance unless proper procedures and efforts towards gender and racial equality persist. It is within those fields of social justice that important perspectives and experiences are attained and expand architecture to the way it is. To get rid of doing so would only hurt the growing field itself.